If only Bruce Tim can do that as a.
Gotta go live on one more thing. Sorry, guys. Give me a second. Account settings.
I gotta put this away in the box before my
Give
fiance
me
sees how
the
many.
code.
Hide the evidence. All right, I gotta finish pulling what I need to pull. Let's see.
And go live.
Those are definitely mine.
Doing Marvel. Marvel and Indy comic reviews for the week of 10/7. Oh my god! Oh my god! Okay. Wow. Okay. Oh, okay. Taking off my mask so the deaf community can read my lips, because I can't sign fast enough. Sorry. In the meantime, we will be going over this week's books. Do we have any news? Any news? Any news? Dune got pushed back to like late next year.
Who else? We were just talking about DC. DC didn't just get pushed back.
What DC got pushed back?
The Batman
movie.
Black Adam.
Yeah.
I saw that Black Adam teaser, man. I can't believe they're pushing it back, but they're dropping teasers like that. It's crazy. So, I feel like they're hanging the movie industry because the movie industry desperately needs money, and they're all just like, I'm not going to release with like less than stellar blockbuster numbers.
Dune got pushed back too.
Yeah, Dune got pushed back to late 2021. Sucks. Oh well, pick that up in a minute. Sorry, man. Anything else? Any other news? Gotham Knights looks amazing. Avengers still looks like crap. Cam, you like the Avengers game? You do. Okay.
The patches are fixing things.
Are they?
Yeah, they release the patch at least once a week.
Maybe I'll re-download it because I mean, is the controls better on Iron Man yet?
A little bit, yeah. It's on my main.
A little bit is not
I still
good
haven't
news.
installed mine.
Like my main store broken Cap.
Yeah, almost all the melee characters. I mean, Cap, does he count as a melee when he's throwing his shield? Okay, we're going to go over one of the characters from the Avengers game, too. This is Saladin Ahmed, Minka Jung, and Ian Herring. And, of course, we're talking about the magnificent Ms. Marvel, issue number 15. And, well, Ms. Marvel's back. She's come out of her coma. She's facing the horrors of school again. And meanwhile, she's kind of rather annoyed that there is an act in her name that is sort of persecuting all of the kid superheroes. So she's a little mad, and she's going to wind up butting heads. It's funny. Kamala is going to be the biggest enemy of the Kamala Act. I can see it. So that's what they're going for. And yeah, I do kind of like that the enemy is called Cradle. That's all types of insulting to like kid superheroes.
The Cradle.
Yeah, Cradle, Team Cradle. So yeah, it's great. It's great. The art is amazing. The back, you get this amazing tribute to Chadwick Boseman. But yeah, the art is it's to die for. But you know, this Ms. Marvel run has been amazing the whole way through. The story's great. This is exactly what we want out of Ms. Marvel. It felt perfect. So just keep going. Keep going. Next is Emma Kubert and Rusty Glad, and we're talking about Inkblot. And the last issue involved, well, a wizard who had been sitting in a room studying endlessly forever. I think it was like hundreds of years, and she came across this magic cat that led her into a portal. And yeah, this also centers around the same cat who is trying to fight a dragon, no less. It's kind of awesome. And it involves elves. Honestly, this book itself felt like an old school elf quest at times. It was kind of dope. And I'm really loving this cat, both the look of this cat and the character of this cat. I mean, it hasn't said anything but meow, but it's hysterical. I'm having the best time with it. So Inkblot issue number 22, or number 2, not 22. I hope it goes 22. The art is good. The storyline's great. It doesn't quite link up with the last book, which has me a bit confused. I want to know exactly where they're going. Maybe this book came out before the last book. I'm not entirely sure. Next is issue number 1 of Sonic the Hedgehog Bad Guys. And, you know, it's Sonic the Hedgehog Bad Guys, but I didn't see one single Eggman. And I have to confess that as someone who has played the Sonic games, but not really read any of the comics, like, and I know it was one of the longest running comics in like history. I didn't know any of these bad guys. Not one of them. One of them looked like a decrepit Knuckles. Like old Knuckles is what it looked like. Old decrepit Granny Knuckles. That's what I'd call it. Yeah, I knew none of these characters, so I wasn't terribly attached to the storyline. That said, I mean, you do get a fair share of action, and it involves like the bad guys one of them is trying to build the team up with the other bad guys, and the other bad guys are like, I don't care about you. So it goes about as expected, but I don't know how you're going to have a bad guys book without Eggman. That kind of bothers me, but we'll have to wait and see. Anyways, issue number 1, pretty good. I think if I was a huge Sonic fan, I'd probably be totally happy about that. Next is We Only Find Them When They're Dead. God, can I just say, I really love the design of these comics. If there is ever a cover that makes me want to pick up and thumb through the comic, it's this. And I could have swore it was going to be like a Bring Out Your Dead type thing. And no, this is entirely like, it's like spaceships and space fighting, and there's a bit of a soap opera going on, and I'm really, really digging it. Although I didn't read the first one, did I? I don't think I did. I think we sold out before I got to. So I was a little confused. I would say don't jump in on this, but oh my God, this is the art candy for your eyes. It's so good. The art is just amazing. Like top tier good. It's Simone DeMille. And Al Ewing. So the writing's going to be good because, you know, you're getting that Moral Hope writer. And frankly, it was just awesome. I finished this book and had to set it aside so that I could review the other books, and just wanted to pick it up and thumb back through it and go back over it. And I didn't have time. So that really is a testament to how good this book is. It was amazing. It really, really good showing. I want to know where they're going with this. It sort of left me on a cliffhanger, and I'm kind of annoyed with that. But this is kind of the space fight fiction stuff that I really sort of dream of. So it's the perfect sci-fi story. So come grab this. Next is Robert Kirkman, Chris Samney, and with Matt Wilson and Russ Wooten. And of course, we're talking about the Image Skybound imprint, issue number 4 of Firepower. Now, we discussed this. This was like if Ken or Ryu settled down with a family and were also attacked by ninjas but could still throw fireballs. That's essentially what Firepower is. It involves, like, you know, a bunch of ninja clans, and there's a lot of soap opera going on between the family and flashbacks of like trading and then, you know, some fight scene involving a fireball. That's what you get with Firepower. It's great. It's honestly great. I'm not bored. I at times when I'm reading this, I have confessed before that my guilty pleasure sometimes is Archie comics, because for whatever reason that soap opera feels right. And this gives me the same feeling at times. Like I'm reading it and I'm like, oh, this soap opera is kind of fun. They're going back and forth and this and that. And then ninjas attack. And that's pretty much everything a 1980s kid would ever want and more. And that's just it appeals to me on like so many levels. So I'm having a good time with Firepower, and I think you will too. Issue number 4 doesn't let up. Plus, you get to see the main character swing from a chain. But that made me think of Kung Pao, the legend can do. The one scene where he's like swinging a chain, just like standing on top of a waterfall. Oh, I love that movie. Oh, it's so good. And then you find out that they've spliced like all these kung fu movies together and like superimposed everything, and it's so good. Next is Marvel Snapshots, Spider-Man, and I think Al. I'm going to quote you and say that Al buys these books because the covers are amazing. Full stop.
Pretty much.
It's kind of a facsimile inside, so you know you're sort of getting an older story, and you are getting a piece of history every time. But these covers, they're Alex Ross, right? Very clearly Alex Ross covers, and they're all amazing. So we will have these on our shelf. If you are a cover aficionado, if you are anyone else and you want some Spider-Man stuff that's less dated, buy the main stuff off the shelf. Just saying. Next is the Ultraman, Rise of Ultraman. Higgins, Groom, Mana, and Gruntajern. And, well, this is an origin story for Ultraman, but I have to confess and say that I don't remember his origin being anything like this. And maybe I'm mistaken. Did you read the other ones yet?
No,
Was he pilot? And then the Ultra flew into him?
No. This was they found this thing by the side of the road type stuff, government, and then he shows up with them, and that's kind of where it picks up, and it's like a firestorm, that suddenly starts speaking, and it's wild. I will say I'm invested in this story. I grew up loving Ultraman, so I'm super into it. I'm interested in it, but we're all just waiting for Ultraman to suit up and go like this. It's really, we're just waiting for that. And I've been waiting quite a few issues. I mean, no, it's only 2 issues deep. Okay, it's only 2 issues deep. But if he doesn't suit up by the next one, it looks like they're about to suit up at the end of this, but it could be a fake out. That's all. That's probably too much spoiler there. I'm sorry. Anyways. But it'll be on our shelf, and if you're an Ultraman fan, you know who you are, and you're probably already buying it. Let's be honest. Next is issue number 18, and we're talking about Belair, Lambert, Box, and Angelo. And, of course, we're discussing Buffy the Vampire Slayer. But more importantly, Willow's been gone for a bit. She had to deal with the trauma of, condemning Xander to hell, I guess, through the Hellmouth. And so she went to go find herself in Europe, and then if you're reading her side adventure, she's hanging out in a witch's town still. So this takes place after that, when she's finally returned to Sunnydale, and she's trying to reconnect with her friends. And of course, she's doing it in a very Willow way, which will involve magic and trust falls and all types of weirdness. Meanwhile, Buffy, literal trust falls. Meanwhile, Buffy is sort of, dealing with a new relationship, and it's Kendra's brother, which I'm not even sure Kendra's brother existed in the series. I can't remember her having a brother, and she was a very late game Slayer, but she's very early in this, so it's cool. I'm having a good time with it, and nothing is old. I don't see any of these twists coming, because he's really taken the same characters and he's telling a completely different story, which is what I wanted. This should be what everyone does with their brand. I don't know why so many people don't do it. Take the same characters, retell a different story. Maybe do it in a different decade, and why not? That will appeal to everyone on all sides of the fence. So, I'm having a good time. I shouldn't say that, because we all know that our fandom is fickle. So it's not going to appeal to everyone on all sides of the fence ever. Never. I shouldn't say things like that. We all know that's wrong. But anyways, so this is great. As a Buffy fan, I'm really, really enjoying it. Come pick this up if you're a Buffy fan. Carl says, no, I'm not, but I will be picking it up because I got into Ultraman recently from watching Gridman the anime. Oh, okay. Cool, man. That's dope. Yeah. Next is Sewell, Rosanas, and Rosenberg, and we're talking about Star Wars, but more importantly, the Will of Tarkin. Did you know Moff Tarkin, is it Moff Tarkin?
Yeah.
Yeah, Moff Tarkin had an assistant, a female assistant that he sends out to behead things.
Wouldn't be surprised. I mean, he is a Grand Moff.
He's a Grand Moff, dude. He does some beast stuff. This is Moff Tarkin built out and doing some badass stuff that I never knew happened. So I'm having a good time with it. But if you know me, you know I tend to favor the Imperial stuff a bit more. I tend to favor the dark side a bit more. So, well, actually, if I'm honest, I favor Mandalorians and all that stuff, bounty hunters and stuff like that. I think I favor the crime syndicate stuff more than anything else. But this is pretty darn good, and this takes place in the Lost Years. I believe it's 10 years between Empire and Jedi. which makes the plan to rescue Han so messed up because it took them that long.
Yeah.
So this takes place in Lost Years. It's good. It's really, really good. I'm having a good time with it, and it will be here waiting for you to come pick up. If you're a Star Wars fan, you're probably already subbed because we have a lot of subs for Star Wars. Turkin is pretty dope, to be honest. Also, is it just me, or does Jackson kind of sound like there's a slight distortion? I have no idea.
You know what? We don't have the mic set up today.
Oh, we don't have the mic set up.
Oh, you
Oh.
just want to hand it to me. I'll get it print. Sorry, guys.
You're probably getting distortion because it's using the mic. It's next to another mic, and we need to pipe that off the PC. Give me 1 second. We'll get that set up.
Technical timeout.
We're super behind today, guys. Sorry.
Yeah, we were super busy. Give me a second. Thanks for that heads up, though, Tyler.
Yes.
Here we go. Here we go.
Just hit the blinky red light when it comes on. Ooh.
Okay. Hopefully, you guys can hear us better in YouTube land. And hopefully you have less distortion in Twitch land. Sorry about that. With any luck, that would have fixed it. I'm also going to move my phone over. So that's no problem. I'm always willing to criticize you. Thanks. Thanks for that. Next is, and this is the proper reading order for this week. So if you are following X of Swords, Cam, pay attention to this reading order because this is the order you need to go in this week or you will get confused. Wolverine number 6 should be number 1. X-Force number 13 should be the next one. And then the last one should be Marauders. So it should be in that order in particular. Each one of these books is going to center around somebody getting a sword. And they're all pretty badass. Of course, you know Wolverine's going to be wielding a katana. That just goes without saying. It's part of his history. So yeah, that's what we're gonna get in this one is him finding his blade, which probably comes from a Japanese samurai. So yeah, not really surprised. This should surprise no one. But it's good. It was a really good one, and the end of it was very, very shocking and didn't quite make sense until Marauders. So was it Marauders or no until X-Force, until the next book. So you absolutely have to buy all 3 of these to get the tie-in to understand what's going on with X of Swords. I will say I still think that they're defining a religion with this event as such, but the Sword Quest is pretty badass when we think about it. They've got to put together a bunch of swordsmen. They're going to be taking on their champions as well, and if they die there, then they're done. So yeah, it's wow. So yeah, it's good. Next, we're gonna talk about X of Swords, X-Force, Percy Bogdanovich and Wilson. The art was great, really, really good. The story was great as well. This one is just gonna pick up after the last one of Wolverine about him getting a sword. And same thing, really, really good story. Had a good time with it. The art was good. It was on point. And this is telling the full story of what's going on with Wolverine getting a sword. The next one, if you can't tell from the cover, Marauders, but that is going to center around Storm getting her sword, which I'm not going to spoil it for you, but you probably need to read this if you're a Storm fan. You probably need to read this if you're a Wakanda fan. It's pretty damn good. As far as Storm comics go, this one felt so good, insanely good, well written, really, really fun. Ayala, Lally, and Delgado, top notch. Honestly, might even be my pick of the week. This book in particular was so darn good from start to finish. So I'm gonna call it. This is my pick of the week. So yeah, X of Swords, Marauders, awesome job. Next is Shizuchu and Gunji, and this is Swordmaster, issue number 11, Into the Tomb of Chayu. And for once, Swordmaster's kind of done something right, which his character is all about like sort of tripping over his own feet and falling into stuff, it seems like. And this was awesome. This was really, really good. It was well written. I had a good time. There's probably not enough action, but they're sort of explaining what's going on with the clans. And the art was to die for in this issue in particular. There were a couple pages where I just sort of turned it over and like kind of marveled at the artwork for a minute. It was really good. So yeah, Swordmaster, almost a must buy if you're into all this Marvel manga stuff that's been going on. Next is Scott, Samu, and Garcia Cruz, and wow, Transformers More Than Meets the Eye, Back to the Future crossover. Was not quite ready for this particular issue, but I will say the fan service is great. There's enough Back to the Future in there that it feels right. There's enough Transformers in there that feels right. If you love both the franchises, you will be happy with this. The art is good. On top of that, they play by the timeline rules, which is exactly what I want. So yeah, it was great. And all of the Back to the Future like cast are going to be in there. So it's perfect. Come pick this up. If you're a Back to the Future fan or a Transformers fan, you will absolutely love this. It's not cheesy, it's not over the top, it's not bad. I had a great time with it. So, yep. Next is, well, this is Thompson, Sandoval, Nada, and Sotomayor, and of course, we're talking about Deadpool. And Deadpool's been hanging out with Elsa Bloodstone, whose mouth is probably worse than his. And, you know, it just sort of centers on them getting to know each other. And Elsa's kind of dealing with the fact that she's been infected by some sort of magic parasite, and she's got to get to the bottom of it. And she's getting Deadpool to help her. So maybe. You know, Deadpool tends to be a sucker for a pretty gal. So yeah, that's it was a really, really good issue. The art's on point. Deadpool is still doing the whole King of the Monsters stuff, which oddly enough, they fleshed out more of that in this issue than they have the whole way through, which is all types of weird to say because it's been like 6 issues deep or 7 issues deep that they've been doing that. Almost the entire run has been about like him being King of the Monsters, and we know nothing about them except they hang out on Long Island and they can teleport by puking on each other.
What?
Yeah, puking on each other.
Oh.
Yeah. So yeah, it seems very Deadpool. So it's good. It's good. And if you've been wanting to know the backstory on what he's doing, there's a lot in this. It's great. Next is Black Widow, issue number 2. And well, let's see. Old Bucky and Hawkeye have a problem in that they found Black Widow and she's hanging out in Sausalito. Oh yeah, that's fine. She's hanging out in Sausalito and has a family. And doesn't seem to be on assignment and seems happy. Something is terribly wrong. Terribly wrong. So, yeah, that's what you get. There is really good art. Honestly, this is exactly how I want a Black Widow comic to be drawn. This is the gold standard right here. It's perfect. The art is great. The story's awesome. This is a very fish out of water, something is wrong, sort of Twilight Zone episode feel to it, and I want to know more. So, yeah, good job, guys. Honestly, if you're a Black Widow fan, you will be loving this stuff. Loving it. Next is Zach Thompson, Jen Hickman, and Simon Boland, and this is Lonely Receiver, issue number 2. Now, if you're not sure what this book's about, I wasn't sure. This is the one where it's like a futuristic society where people can order their perfect significant other and it gets delivered. But the drawback is that significant other is bound to a billion other people or something. And this one in particular is like, I just can't hang anymore. I got to leave you, and just winds up leaving this person. So, yeah. Meanwhile, this issue, it seems like it took forever for this to come out. And on top of that, this issue has changed so much. So the last one we knew they were dealing with like clone technology. In this one, they're straight dealing with like biotech stuff, like breathing stuff they put in their mouth, or like, you know, stuff they use to call people that like resembles a phone but is like made of flesh and other stuff. It feels like the movie Existence. Like that's what it feels like. If you remember that like late 90s movie. Yeah, something out of Rick and Morty maybe too. It's wild, and that reason alone, I was super intrigued in the story. But I will say, if you're as confused as I was, yeah, it feels like a couple months went by since that first issue. I don't know what happened, but we hadn't seen it for a couple months, and when it finally wound up in my hands, I was like, oh, this is that story. It was good. The art is good. I was super intrigued by the story. And there are times where it's borderline philosophical, and I kind of want to go a little deeper. By the time it reached the end of this, I honestly wanted to like know more and wanted to have the other comic in my hand. So good job, good showing, good comic. Next is one, oh, okay. This is the variant cover because we're sold out of all the mainline, but resurrected by the very lightning he once commanded. It's Frankenstein Thor, the horror comic variant. Does this star Frankenstein Thor? No. But what has been going on is that Thor is finding that his hammer, now that he is God of the Unworthy, his hammer is rather heavy again, and he's not quite sure why. It doesn't seem to be responding. So last issue, he throws it into Oklahoma, well, as he's prone to do. He's done it more than once, and turns out some old guy winds up lifting it up, and Iron Man's there, and he's a little annoyed, but it seems like the hammer is now going to the unworthy at the same time. So whoever can hold it is going to wind up wielding the powers of Thor, and that's a real problem, like a real problem. And this picks up after that. I'm not going to spoil more than that, other than to say Tony Stark is really angry that Thor put his personal phone number on his hammer. And he threw it back there. He's really pissed. But yeah, it was good. I had a really good time with this. I have loved the art, and poor old Donny Cates cannot get a break, dude. I was on Twitter the other day, and the amount of people that just give him crap is it's insane. That dude is like a legend. So he posted that he did a story. He wrote a story about a frog Thor that, he really, really didn't think he'd be that in love with that story. And immediately somebody pops up and is like, oh, blah, blah, blah. Like, you're just making everyone's going to hold the hammer. It's going to hold no value and blah, 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 SJW stuff. And poor old Donny Cates is like hit in the face with this. And, he represents Marvel, so he's not going to respond like in a rude way. But I went like, that's Throg. Throg is not a new character to comics, but apparently you're new to comics. So welcome.
It's been a while since he's been in the comics.
It's been, it was as Guardians of the Galaxy. Yeah. It was the last time he was in a comic.
Yeah, not even that long, yeah.
But not that long. So I mean, like, if you don't know who Throg is and you're trying to like criticize a Marvel writer, maybe you're a DC fan instead. I don't know. But okay. So poor old Donny, go give Donny Cates respect on Twitter and say it's from Green Machine Comics if you can, because we love him. And this Thor stuff is candy for my soul. I think I said other comics are candy for my soul. This Thor stuff is so good. It's written so well. I didn't think anyone could take the reins after Jason Aaron and do it justice. And of course, if you put Donny Cates on anything, it turns into gold. And that's the case here. The art is so good. And I feel like I'm just at this point, I'm becoming a broken record. But it's true. Like, everyone knows that this stuff is some top shelf art right now. So come pick it up. Next is, well, I've heard a lot about this series. Been waiting for it to come out. Peter Milligan, Aiko, David Lorenzo, and Dean White. And this is American Ronin. And there is a lot of weirdness to unpack in this story. It centers around, well, an American Ronin, I guess, but he's also an assassin. Well, he's an assassin. And he's tasked with killing someone who he can't quite get to. So he's got to go around it. And it has a very transmet cyberpunk feel at times. But then there are times where I'm wondering if it's just our world and they've just got some kind of upgraded like chemical tech or some other weirdness. It's a strange comic. That's all I'm going to say. I'm super intrigued by it. I had a good time with it. The storyline, the art is good. The storyline is, well, it's weird but intriguing, which I don't say that all that often. And if I do, a book is either a hit or a miss by like the next issue. And that's what I'm going to say. I really like this issue. I want to know more, but I'm going to give it one more issue before I cast full judgment on this story. But yeah, it's good. Assassin story, pretty good. Next is Neil Gaiman, P. Craig Russell, and we're talking about Norse mythology. And so, Mike Mignola worked on this. Mike Mignola, Jerry Ordway, Dave Stewart, Laverne Kaczynski, and Galen Shulman. And it's great, but I will say I have the same issues with this book that I had with Neil Gaiman's Norse mythology book that came out, because when Neil Gaiman talks about liking gods and different pantheons, usually we assume he's talking about the Greek gods, because those are pretty much the premise for a lot of the Sandman gods. And he came out a few years back and he was like, my favorite gods are the Norse gods. And everyone's like, really? And he's like, I'm releasing this book called Norse mythology. And immediately everyone was like, oh, he's doing Sandman, but with Norse characters. I can't wait. I can't wait. And it came out and it was, no, these are just like the Norse tales, retold from Neil Gaiman, which, okay. I mean, that's cool. That's cool. And, of course, you're going to hear a master storyteller give you these legends, but it's not really what I want from a fiction writer of his caliber. And that's the same issue. The art, it's good art. You do get some Norse myths, and they're all good Norse myths. One centers around the World Tree. Another one centers around Loki pissing off Thor, which I can go to Donny Cates for that, but it's pretty good here. And so that's what you get, and it kind of leaves on a cliffhanger. So next issue's coming in, and should be the same kind of stuff. I did read his Norse mythology book, and I thought it was pretty good. But again, that was my big gripe with it. Was fingers crossed that he does something over the top with it. Gives us the Norse mythos version of Daniel the Dreamer. Would be amazing, right? Would be amazing if he gave us the Norse version of death. We all think that. Come on, but. Next is Haberlin and Van Dyke, and we're talking about The March, and this is issue number 8. And I have talked, come on, guys, I've talked this book up, and I've told you that the art is just mind-blowing, and that's no different. I have no idea what the artist is doing. I'm sure it's some kind of computer graphic, but I don't know what this style of art counts as. It's really cool to look at. And the magic system in this, in a lot of ways, reminds me of the way it looks. Reminds me of Blackbird, which was the Jen Bartel sort of Neon Vegas magic system. It looks similar in how they draw it, but Jen Bartel throws 90s rave colors on hers. But it's really, really good. It centers around a group of witches that use tattoos, I think, to bind all the different spells onto them is what they do. Sometimes they can use artifacts too. And currently they're dealing with, a rather mischievous leprechaun. That's what this issue is about. I love all the myth stuff they did. They fleshed out Lovecraft. They did something tied to who he was as a person, and which Lovecraft was not a very good person. Let's be honest. Meanwhile, they've taken other just standards in magic, like the leprechaun itself. What a leprechaun is like normally, but their version is much darker and more sinister. And as somebody who watched the old Leprechaun movies, to be able to pull off something more dark and sinister than that, that's pretty good. Although Leprechaun in the Hood. That was something. The last book of the week is Ahmed Carnero, I can't talk tonight, Ferreira, and Curiel. And of course, we're talking about the amazing Miles Morales. And this time, both him and his uncle are captured by that weird sort of VR computer thing that was studying Miles last time. And we're going to finally get some answers, because it was never resolved. He just escaped. And he was like, that sucked. I got some PTSD now. And that was the end of it. And we were like, what kind of resolution is that? Well, they resolved that now, and it's been explained. And it makes sense. If you know the Miles history and involving where Miles originated and what happened, this will make sense. And I hate to say it, but I kind of expected this to happen soon. So it's good. You do get a lot of answers. The art is to die for. Again, I sound like a broken record this week, but every piece of art and all of the Marvel comics this week has been so good. Really good, like top showing from Marvel this week. Really, really good issues. I haven't had one complaint about art and not much complaint about story, and you won't hear it here. This Miles stuff, in a lot of ways, I feel like the Miles stuff now feels like the old Peter Parker, like in the 80s and like early 90s and stuff like that. Like it has that same sort of feel, and it makes sense. You know, he's a younger hero; he's still sort of discovering himself. But I love that stuff, and that's some of the stuff that I miss because Parker's been the standard for Spider-Man for so long, and you forget that he's pushing my age. He's more than my age by now, right?
He came out in what, Amazing Fantasy in the 1960s?
60s, yeah. So he's well over his prime, and Miles is really doing the mantle justice. So I've had a really good time with this. Please keep churning out stuff like this. And that's everything for this week. I have been tired, you guys. I'm not sleeping all that well these days. So coming into work, poor Yogi's got to suffer with my tired self. But I'm glad we got the reviews done, and we will see you next week.
Like and subscribe.
Oh, and I have to remind you to like and subscribe or
Pick
follow.
up your books.
And pick up your books. I'm being ordered at gunpoint by one of our best customers that you better come pick up your books. So that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, that's
Oh.
pretty cool.
Good stuff in